Welcome back. Well, after the decision yesterday by President Cyril Ramaphosa to sign into law the Electoral Amendment Bill, already 5 groups have said they will challenge the law in court. The bill is supposed to provide for a mechanism for individuals to contest for seats in the National Assembly and in provincial legislatures. But these groups say that under this law, independent candidates would have to get 12,000 signatures to contest an election. A political party only has to get 1,000 signatures. They also say if an independent candidate gets enough votes for a seat in Parliament, the votes that are left over after that would be shared among the bigger political parties and would not be received by the candidate. In other words, if you voted for an independent candidate who already had enough seats to get into Parliament, your vote would go to someone else and not the person you voted for. That's the argument. Lethlogonolo Letshele is an Electoral Systems Researcher at My Vote Counts. Lethlogonolo, good afternoon to you. What do you think about this bill? Should the President have signed it into law?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me. I thought that he was going to refer the bill back to Parliament or at least get some advice from the Constitutional Court, simply based on the reason that you have stated that the bill is currently unconstitutional. I think the fundamental issue is that it creates an equal competition between political parties and independent candidates. So they're expected to sort of contest in the same territory, in the same constituency that are going to be regions, instead of what we have in local government, where you have wards and where we have an actual PR sort of system. And another thing is that it does not really create meaningful participation for independent candidates. Remember, the judgment said that whatever system that we come up with, we need to ensure that once independent candidates come in, they are able to participate fully, actively, fair, and equally. We are not seeing that. And another thing that you also alluded to was the issue of proportional representation, where we are going to see a lot of votes being wasted because once an independent candidate receives the quota, of votes that they need for a single seat, the rest of the seats are discarded. So, which simply means that the people that would have voted for that indie, their votes are not going to matter. So the issue of proportional representation is that the will of the people is not being done because their votes are not going to be represented in the national legislature. So that's the big issue around the constitutionality of now what we call the Act.
So Letshele, I mean, you clearly believe that the people who, if I've understood you correctly, that the people who are challenging this probably got a fairly strong case. There's a much bigger question, of course, which is what system should we use instead?
The issue here was that Parliament or the government tried to include independent candidates in an existing PR system. So the best option would have been to go with the sort of constituency-based system where you have half of the seats coming from a PR allocation and the other half coming from the constituency-based system. So what we're seeing is that it's an impossibility, with what we have on the table, trying to include independent candidates, and hence we have all of these unintended consequences because it's very difficult for an independent candidate to even make way with the system that we have. And then there's the issue of the signature threshold as well, that they are required to get approximately 15% of the previous quota, whereas political parties still maintain that 1,000 signatures that they needed. In trying to remedy that, they said the upcoming parties, political parties should get the same as independents, which is the 15%. I mean, that does not really remedy the situation because political parties that are already in Parliament, they got in with their 1,000. So really that barrier for entry still remains for independent candidates.
So I hear the argument for a constituency system. In other words, that you would vote for someone to represent you where you live. So, for an example, you would vote, if you lived in Umlazi, you would vote for someone to represent you in Umlazi. But that still means that if you did not vote for the person who won Umlazi, your vote in the end wouldn't count. You see this in Britain, there's a good example there. Lots of people there support a party called the Liberal Democrats. They always do badly because they always come second or third in constituencies, and so those votes then are essentially lost. Let me put it to you, isn't proportional representation the two sort of big strengths of it? One is that every vote is counted, and the second is it's quite simple. You know that my vote and your vote are counted equally in proportional representation, and I think that's probably a good thing.
I think you're correct, and one of the reasons that the PR system was opted for was because it's simple. And then with also the issues that we had with the history of South Africa, it was possibly the best way to unite us and have diverse political parties coming in. But, democracy has evolved and we've had challenges, emanating from that system, and particularly because of the closed list that is attached to that system. So people do not have a say on who political parties eventually put up. So what happens is that the power of the voter really ends just by signing that X in the ballot box. So I think the main issue that has been driving sort of electoral reform has been the issue of accountability. So people think that having a sort of constituency-based system will try, and encourage that direct accountability. So if you vote for someone in your locality, you are able to go and tell them that, the sewage is not working, this and that.
I have no idea how all of this court case is going to end. I do know there's an election next year, and I do know that there's a man called Simon Mabolo who's the chief electoral officer, and it's his job to make next year's election work. Lethlogonolo, what's your advice for poor Sai? Which system should he prepare for?
I mean, Sai has been preparing in the hope that the act will be enacted with the bill currently, how it was working. So I think they've got sort of a step ahead because they've started preparing with the assumption that the bill will be enacted as it is. So they can continue. So the civil society organizations that are going to court for the IEC could be an issue where they're going to prolong the process. So it's going to be a nightmare for them. But I think for the IEC, they need to prepare and hope for the best that come next year, hopefully May, we do have a free and fair election. I think we owe it to the country that that happens regardless.
In the end, this is all about making sure we have a voting system that makes sure that votes are counted, that makes sure that people also understand it. Now we're going to have a court case, and we're going to have a legal fight, and probably a political fight after that, and goodness knows what after that. We shouldn't be here, should we? I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to have a system that everyone agrees on.
I mean, it's partly government's fault because, they were warned once. I think we had this bill last year, and then there was some public participation process we did and tried to change it a bit. But the final version that they had was around September, I think. So since then, we've been advising Parliament on the fundamental issues, which is the unequal competition between independents, and saying that this is opening the door for litigation because you are not responding or you are not giving justice to the Concord judgment. So they were warned. So hence I was saying that I was hoping at least for the president to refer back the matter to Parliament to say, can we try at most to fix these constitutional issues, or maybe even have sort of a sunset clause so that we do give people surety that come beyond 2024 we'll be able to fix, but that did not happen, and hence we are going to see litigation on those issues, the issue of general proportional representation that is not happening, and also the unequal participation of independent candidates.
Lethlogonolo, what I say next is just my opinion, so you tell me what you think, but let me put it to you, it's no one else's. We are going to have a very contentious election next year. We all know why. We all know what could happen, what might happen, what may not happen. And now we're going to be changing the system to something different that we've never tried before. And I just wonder, only Stephen Curtis's view, I just wonder if it may be unwise to change the system like 9 months before the most difficult election we've ever had.
You know what? The issue with that is that this was supposed to happen a long time ago. The deadline was 2022, June, where we were supposed to have a new system. So the IEC would have had 2 years to prepare systems, to prepare the voters. So it's an issue of Parliament failing and sleeping on the job and not getting this ready. And now we're going to have issues of credibility of the elections because people who have not been, socialized with the system. So it becomes a really serious issue. So we have a lot of work to get people to understand the impact of the system and the impact that it will have on their votes and the outcome. So I do understand your suspicions, but unfortunately the court order and Parliament had to really abide by that, and hence we have the situation. So we really hope that people will be on board. The IC has a lot of work. We and you have a lot of work in helping people understand, so that we all pitch come next year to the polls.
I mean, I sort of agree with what you say as well. Lethlogonolo, I don't think Parliament's been asleep at all. Let me say it very plainly. I think that the political parties currently in Parliament like the system as it was because it suited them, and I think they were asleep deliberately.
I think so. And also the president might be also complicit because he also took a bit of time as well to sign and did not really critically engage with the issues that were presented. So probably also protecting the political parties in the same breath as well. So I do tend to agree with what you're saying.
Letshele, thank you. Electoral Systems Researcher at My Vote Counts. Do appreciate the time.